Our next panelist is Malick KANE, the coordinator of the GORÉE Memorial. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, everybody. First of all, I have a video here for you, but before showing the video, we would like to recognize some organizations like the Remember Slavery program here in the United Nations, who is doing such a great job and giving this opportunity to the GORÉE Memorial to exchange and talk to you today. So first, I'm going to try to ask for the video about the GORÉE Memorial, if it's ready.
Je voudrais vous annoncer, s'il plaît à Dieu, que j'entends construire le musée, le mémorial de GORÉE, porte du retour, à partir du deuxième semestre de l'année 2019, s'il plaît à Dieu.
Aujourd'hui, aucun scientifique, et je le répète, n'oserait donc remettre en question la primauté de la race noire, parce que les premiers hommes sont apparus en Afrique. Et pour rejoindre ce que je dis souvent, que lorsque je termine mes conférences à l'étranger, je leur dis toujours que la réalité, c'est que nous sommes tous des Noirs.
Par conséquent, le mémorial veut signifier ce moment important où l'Afrique, malgré elle, par la force, par les supplices, par les tortures, a été amenée à envoyer une partie de ses enfants par-delà l'océan Atlantique et à constituer ainsi d'autres sociétés, d'autres communautés, d'autres peuples noirs qui ont porté le génie de l'Afrique, le dynamisme de l'Afrique, la vitalité africaine dans les techniques, dans la production économique, ainsi que dans les arts, les lettres et la culture, au-delà de l'océan, en Amérique du Sud et dans l'Amérique du Nord.
L'Atlantique témoin hier a pu déclarer qu'une mafia triangulaire est réelle, c'est cet accaparé des plus valeureux puis s'égarés et les satellites mal barrés face au dépêché Tombouctou, Caï, René, Caï, Prospect.
Il fallait tout de même ériger un monument à la mémoire de tous ces martyrs de l'esclavage et portant le nom du mémorial de GORÉE.
Le plus décisif dans cette affaire-là, c'est la volonté politique, elle est là. Parce que ce projet a été pensé, beaucoup doit couler sous les ponts, mais la volonté politique telle qu'elle s'affirme aujourd'hui me paraît suffisante pour commencer la mise en place de ce lieu de mémoire.
L'idée du mémorial, c'est de restituer toutes ces balises de l'histoire, des points forts, des points culminants de l'histoire, qui ont été atteints grâce à l'effort de l'Afrique.
Parce que le but de l'exercice, c'est quoi? C'est d'abord de redonner à tous les Africains l'estime de soi, cette estime que nous avons perdue.
Les yeux fixés sur l'infini, la souffrance.
On était plus de 150 le fond de la cale, mal prunelles rangées comme des sardines qu'on avale, sans oxygène que cette urne.
Le projet du mémorial de GORÉE a un cordon ombilical avec l'île de GORÉE. Mais c'est-à-dire que quand ce projet sera réalisé sur le continent, avec ses musées, avec ses salles de spectacle, avec son planétarium, etc., nous allons faire des études, mais qui démontrent que chaque année, le mémorial va rapporter à peu près 2 à 3 milliards de francs CFA.
I remember the first time I visited Senegal, and I went to GORÉE Island, and I'm standing there, and even, I feel it even now, that emotional feeling that this is where many of us as African Americans started our journey to the United States against our will.
Thank you so much for showing this important short film, which is produced last year, telling the story about, first, the story of the GORÉE Memorial, which is an old Pan-African project born out of the minds of scholars, artists, activists from Africa and the diaspora and all the philanthropists around the world in 1986. Then backed by a resolution from African Union by that time, 2 resolutions, and another resolution from UNESCO also. And here at United Nations in 1988, the international competitions was launched with the Secretary General of United Nations and the Secretary General of the African Union, also the representative of the General Director of UNESCO. So quickly, I know I don't have enough time. If you can show the rest of the slides and move forward. So another thing to be reminded is the GORÉ Memorial is not just about a memorial telling the story of GORÉ Island, because the goal is to crystallize and to embody all the African sites of memory related not only to the transatlantic slave trade, but related also to any kind of slave trade, trans-Saharan and all the form of slavery that Africa and its descendants are the victims. For the first thing, if you can go back here. Go back to the beginning, yes. Okay, here. This is a quote from a well-known famous professor, the first African historian, we can say, Kizerbo. You heard his voice in the film. He said, Africa is like Osiris. It has been torn apart and scattered over the earth. It is our responsibility to put it back together. This is the core mission and the core value of the GORÉ Memorial. Like I was saying, a lot of people know about what happened in Elmina, Ghana, in Ouida, Benin, Badagry, Nigeria, Zanzibar, and all these African sites of memory. But we need to come up with a special global Afrogenic narrative, what we call the Afrogenic narrative. It means like this story need to be written, need to be told by the African people also, and they have to teach it to their population globally, to the whole continent. So the GORÉ Memorial was designed primarily before the international competition, even if we know it's still a project. And you heard the president, the Senegalese president Macky Sall, saying that from this year we're going to start building the GORÉ Memorial. But primarily when we developed this idea and this project was put together, it was primarily to try to put it on the mainland, the main continent. It wasn't there for the island itself, because when the GORÉ Memorial will be built, a small replica should be built around all the continent in all African capitals. That's what the African Union in 1998, 1986, and 1991 also, and UNESCO also in 1988 were backing this project, was backing the Senegalese government to have it done. Next slide. So, first, about GORÉ Island. A lot of people heard about it. Rodney Leon talked about it. And a lot of people, when they go to Senegal, they visit the island. Unfortunately, a lot of Senegalese people and Africans didn't have a chance to visit GORÉ Island for many reasons. We don't have time to come back about it. But the GORÉ Memorial, when it's built in the mainland, would give an opportunity with 2 ferries from the westernmost point of the continent, which is in Dakar, in front of the Americas. We'll have 2 ferries taking people to the island. So when we talk about the consequences of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade, Mr. Marshall I don't have maybe the time to come back to what he was saying about the consequences and the importance of telling this story, but just to tell you that in terms of the perspective of the African continent, being in this paradigm of telling the story with the departure, because we're talking about the return, with the arc of return, we're talking about the door of return here at African Burial Ground, but we need also to focus a little bit on this departure of these millions of people also. So what I was saying also about the World Foundation for the Memorial and Safeguarding of GORÉ, which was set in 1989, and with different chapters around the world, one here in the United States, in Brazil, the Caribbeans, and the Afro-Latinos countries, Canada, Europe, Asia, and Africa also. And today, the World Foundation, after the call to action, is trying to react and bring back this project on the table, on the floor, so that we can have at least the construction of this GORÉ Memorial starting before December 2019 this year. So one of the goal and the mission of the World Foundation for the Memorial and Safeguarding of GORÉ is to engage and have a global mobilized diaspora. We're talking about a mobilized diaspora so that we can diplomatically and multilaterally have the GORÉ Memorial on the table right now. Next slide. So this is the design, and we're going to have a chance to have also a view of the design. This design was primarily in 1998 with an international contest with 800 architects from around the world, with the oversight of UNESCO and the International Union of Architects also. And this one was with Ottavio Di Blasi, who won the competition with his cabinet. And it's telling the divided village of Africa, two villages divided by the transatlantic slave trade, are reunited. One from the diaspora is coming back. Go to the next slide. And the other one is in the mainland. And he used a lot of African traditions, iconography, like Rodney was saying, to design the GORÉ Memorial idea. Next slide. Here, the president receiving them. Next slide. Yes, we have another view of the GORÉ Memorial design. So it's like an upside-down ship, because just to remind you that for the contents of the project, we have two international museums inside the GORÉ Memorial. The first one is the International Slavery Museum. It's important. The second one is the Museum of Navigation, because sometimes we forget it, but the transatlantic navigation didn't start with Christopher Columbus. And we can tell you with the GORÉ Memorial studies and research that with the University of Dakar, with the westernmost point, you can find some naval construction sites, prehistoric, that are there. And Africans used to sell also to the Americas, called Tarana in the indigenous language, way before 1492 or 1312 with Bakary II, who was a Malian empire. A lot of people know the Malian empire. Who was the Malian emperor, I mean. And the goal here is to restore all these historical markers and tell the story of this Atlantic triangle between Europe, the Americas, and the African continent, but in the fully perspective with the global picture. Next. So now, quickly, the next steps for the GORÉ Memorial Project is, as it started with scholars, with intellectuals, artists, and activists from around the world, with a big support from the civil society. And now the Senegalese government is reopening the door with the president who was elected last month, re-elected last month, and we're trying to get on board everybody. Like the Remember Slavery program is backing us also, like UNESCO is backing us also, and try to have the GORÉE Memorial. We have the budget. It's going to be in our currency, French CFA, between 45 billion of our currency, which is like around $80 million. And you're going to have a think tank inside, and the talk and the discussions would keep going on progress after this important session. I know the Senegalese mission with our ambassador, His Excellency Cheikhna, who is represented here by Mr. Gallo, is really backing us and is ready to support it and support us and support the project. Once again, thank you so much for listening to this talk and this presentation. Thank you.